I think that's just actually one of the best 10 trends I've been through with you, because there are such major ones. Just have a quick summary, if you could, with us.
Right.
The top 10 trends, just go through it very, very quickly, of 2017. What were they? First is that Trump is shaking the world, and India too, with his
tax plans.
Yeah, you're going to drop it to 15%.
That's right. And we have to
the
watch
euphoria in America, the American business about him.
Yes, that's right. Now, of course, some of it may have a bit of a positive rub-off effect, at least, because if the American economy does well, it's still the largest economy. It does here. But the way that this is going about is that it's a bit of a zero-sum game, because they want to do it by saying that we want to suck money back into our economy, possibly at the loss of somebody else.
You have to be a real optimist to think that that's going to help India. But yeah, it could affect India. The only positive is that it will be a lot of pressure to bring tax rates down.
That's right.
The second point that you raise is deglobalization in so many fronts. And it is quite disturbing. But on the economic front, it's bad news for outsourcing.
Yeah, I think that this model of exporting away to prosperity, which is what many countries followed, and also in terms of outsourcing, I think are under serious threat by what's going on here with deglobalization.
Right. Now, let's have a look at the third trend that you had mentioned. I mean, these two are just huge trends. The third one is a complete rescaling and reassessment of what we think is doing well. 7% growth rate is an outlier like never before. Only 6 countries are growing at 7%, and they're generally tiny little countries. So it's going to be harder than ever before for India to grow at 7%. That's the negative look. And the positive, even if you grow at 5.5, you're not doing too badly on a global scale.
Yeah, I think that's what...
Relatively.
Yes, I think that's what it is. But of course, in India's case, the other challenge is that what's the growth rate we need to create jobs? Because even these kind of growth rates, which are relatively high by global standards, aren't really leading to great jobs growth. I think that, to me, is a bit of a concern.
On the whole, I would say that is a negative, and it's a fallout of deglobalization and inward looking. And 7% may be relatively good, but absolutely it's not good. In absolute terms, it's not good for a country which has got so much unemployment and poverty. Let's have a look at the fourth one that you had mentioned. This is just a quick summary. The fourth point is anti-incumbency revolt across the world has intensified sharply. From 90% of governments being voted back, only 40% are being voted back. There's just anger.
Yeah, there's anger
and disillusionment or whatever.
Yeah, anger, and as I said, so that about what the leaders are doing to fight this anger is, to me, even a bit more concerning.
Right.
Rise in nationalism and rise in experimentation, which is try new experiments, or, and some will sort of say more cynically, diversions at a time when the economic results aren't satisfactory.
Right. Now let's have a look at the fifth global trend. It's for me, just a horrible trend, and it's so true that now that you've pointed it out. A declining faith in democracy and a kind of greater faith in authoritarianism or strong leadership, that's on the rise. And that's across the world.
Yeah, in most countries. There are these pockets like Switzerland, as we pointed out, which are fine.
Sweden, actually.
Exactly, and Sweden and some other sort of countries like Estonia. But broadly what we're seeing is that the younger population in particular is more disillusioned with the results from democracy and would rather settle for an authoritarian
that's
figure.
Even more worrying. That's the younger lot that are voting for, or that want
have a preference
for authoritarianism.
Partly because
they don't remember.
Exactly, doesn't capture that.
You youngsters, that's the problem. But actually the youngsters didn't vote against Brexit, so you have some confused lot. Let's have a look at the sixth trend that Ruchir talked about. This is a quick summary. Growing nationalism. This is part of the deglobalization, the inward looking, and that's going to lead to more defense spending.
Yes.
And a lot of people think that's a terrible waste of money, but that's reality.
Exactly, because we had such a big peace dividend where global defense spending was down or barely went up for many years after the fall of communism. Right. But I think we're seeing a reversal in that now. And it's partly, as I said, that it's partly also because America is in a defensive crouch, and like each one's to their own.
Which what Trump says, you go either pay me or look after yourself.
Exactly.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Okay, and the number 7 again is a worry, the cracks in the tech space.
Yeah.
But it's a worry in the sense, maybe it's a reality check, because the cracks in the tech space, you mean there are markdowns, down rounds and shutdowns. And that's basically lower valuations or closing down businesses all across the tech, especially the e-commerce world.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not that worried about this, but I think it's a return to sanity rather than something which I would say like is going bust as yet. But yeah, this is something which, like, obviously sort of the big boom that we had with this explosion in unicorns, and that was the talk of the town, that buzz has now shifted to these new words out there.
Right. The one interesting bit of surprising good news is the 8th trend of 2017. Have a look. Europe's comeback. That is a potential big surprise, because everybody thinks Europe, as you said, was the museum.
A giant open-air museum is what one of my former colleagues referred to Europe once, and that's an image which is stuck in our head. Great places to visit, nothing more. And again, as I said, this is all about expectations. I don't expect that Italy is going to become some vibrant economy overnight and going to sort of take over the world or something like that. But what I'm trying to say is that the worst for Europe seems behind us.
Yes.
And yet, if you look at the popular sentiment, it's still very much as if Europe is about to fall apart. Right. And I think that the center is holding in Europe. And the attitudes towards the European Union are still on balance, favorable rather than unfavorable in many of the key nations of Europe. So I think the European project is under less threat than what people think.
And everything you've said so far, all the 8 trends could all be thrown aside and blown sky high by this 9th trend. There's a bomb that's ticking, and that's the China's debt bomb, and it's still ticking and it's getting worse and worse. And you said that if there is a global recession, China this time could be the origin of it.
You know, we've spent so much time trying to identify that what is the single most important factor which explains why nations have boom and bust cycles.
Right.
And I find that over long periods of history, the only consistent factor is debt, which is that when a nation takes on too much debt over a short time horizon, that almost always marks the end of that boom, and often with dire consequences. And I think in China's case, that's what's going on. That when you're taking on more than $4 of debt to create just $1 of GDP growth, when the normal state of affairs is that debt and GDP tend to sort of go up together.
1:1.
1:1.
4.5:1.
Yeah.
That is frightening.
When you do that, it really is very problematic. And I think that's what concerns me, that yes, they can possibly keep kicking the can down the road because all the debt is internally held, foreigners aren't there to come calling on the debt, and the government plays such an active role in controlling the financial system. But we have to keep our eye on that ball, because that could, as you said, upend everything that we think is happening in the global economy just now.
And I must say, Ruchir, and it's not me just saying, but everybody globally, especially in the financial world, attribute you to having foreseen China's big problem, the debt problem. Now, don't be modest. I mean what I said for once in my life. And finally, the 10th trend. But, you know, this is a trend which I knew all about.
Right.
Let's have a look at it. The 10th trend. People are watching less sports. Forget that. They're watching more news, and that's what they should do. Finally, the world is waking up.
Well, I hope here too. All right, but this is definitely this has a lot to do with the Trump effect. But generally,
Actually,
I think
watch sports.
That the geopolitical sort of risks are on the rise, and people are very keen to sort of know what's happening across the world. So that's the trend that I find. But the less sports, I think, has taken people by surprise.
Actually, it's almost a plug for our NDTV book. More news is good news.
That's your line, yeah.